Greetings. Today's video presentation includes the three stages of the Understand by Design framework by Wiggins and McTee and Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive levels. The agenda or plan for today's presentation includes three key components. First, a description based on this week's reading assignments and resources of the three stages of Wiggins and McTee's Understanding by Design. And then, second, the six levels of Bloom's taxonomy, also based on this week's reading assignments and resources, will be presented. I will attempt to provide examples to illustrate the framework and taxonomy. Finally, I will share my initial thoughts of a teaching opportunity where the backward design framework and Bloom's taxonomy are applied to develop the learning task and learning objectives. Okay, so let's start with Understand by Design. So, a learning is enhanced when teachers think purposefully about curricular planning. This is something that we learned from this week's readings. The Understanding by Design framework helps focus curriculum and teaching on the development and deepening of student understanding and transfer of learning. Understanding is revealed when students autonomously make sense of and transfer their learning through authentic performance. There are six facets of understanding: the capacity to explain, which include the capacity to explain, interpret, apply, shift perspective, empathize, and self assess. And these can serve as indicators of understanding. Effective curriculum is planned backward from long term desired results through a three-stage design process: design, desired result, evidence, and learning plan. Teachers are coaches of understanding, and they focus on ensuring that learning happens. They always aim and check for successful meaning, making and transfer by the learner. Regularly reviewing units and the curriculum against design standards enhances curricular quality and effectiveness and provides engaging professional discussions. The framework reflects a continual improvement approach to student achievement and teacher craft. A key concept in understanding by design framework is alignment, i.e., all three stages must clearly align not only to standards, but also to one another. In other words, the stage one, content and understanding, must be what is assessed in stage two and taught in stage three. So for stage one, it's to identify desired results. Key questions that should be asked include, but are not limited to, the following: what should students know, understand, and be able to do? What is the ultimate transfer we seek as a result of this unit? And what enduring understandings are desired? What essential questions will be explored in depth and provide focus to all learning? An important point in the Understanding by Design framework is to recognize that factual knowledge and skills are not taught for their own sake, but as a means to a larger end. Acquisition of content is a means in the service of meaning making and transfer. Ultimately, teaching should equip learners to be able to use transfer their learning. This is the result we always want to keep in mind. And again, this is what we learned through this week's reading. And then the second stage is determine assessment evidence. The key questions that should be asked here is: how will we know if students have achieved the desired results? What will we accept as evidence of student understanding and their ability to use, i.e., transfer their learning in new situations? And how will we evaluate student performance in fair and consistent ways? In addition to performance tasks, stage two also includes other evidence such as your traditional quizzes, tests, observations, and work examples to round out the assessment picture and to determine what students know and can do. In the Understanding by Design framework, we have identified, or they have researchers have identified, six facets of understanding for assessment purposes. When someone truly understands, they can explain concepts, principles, and processes by putting it in their own words, teaching it to others, justifying their answers, and showing their reasoning. Two, they can interpret by making sense of data, text, and experience through images, analogies, stories, and models. And then three, can apply by effectively using and adapting what they know in new and complex contexts. And then four, demonstrate perspective by seeing the big picture, recognizing different points of view. And then displaying empathy by perceiving sensitivity and walking someone else's shoes. Have self knowledge by showing metacognitive awareness, using productive habits of mind and reflecting on the meaning of the learning and experience. So for stage three of the backward design, it is plan learning experiences and instruction. And the key questions that should be asked here when planning is how will we support learners as they come to understand important ideas and processes? And how will we prepare them to autonomously transfer their learning? What enabling knowledge and skills will students need to perform effectively and achieve desired results? What activities, sequence, and resources are best suited to accomplish our goals? It's in stage three of the backward design. Teachers plan the most appropriate lessons and learning activities to address three different types of goals identified in stage one. So, moving on to the next topic, I'll jump into the six levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So as you can see from this diagram, we're going to start from the bottom, which is the lower order, and work our way up to the higher order, which is part of Bloom's taxonomy. So the first one, the first level is remember, and that's retrieving relevant knowledge from long-term memory. Second is understand, determining the meaning of instructional messages, including oral, written, and graphic communication. And then third level is apply, carrying out or using a procedure in a given situation. And then four is analyze, breaking material into its constituent parts and detecting how the parts relate to one another into an overall structure or purpose. And then five, evaluate, making judgments based on criteria and standards. And then finally, six, create, which is putting elements together to form a novel, coherent whole or make an original project, or excuse me, product. And so, from this week's reading, this is an exact excerpt from one of the YouTube videos that we watched, and I really appreciate how they put what I just described within context. So, how can Blooms help with course design? Before you can understand a concept, you must remember it. And then to apply a concept, you must first understand it. And then in order to evaluate a concept, you must have analyzed it. And then to create an accurate conclusion, you must have completed a thorough evaluation. I really like that. Okay, so with six levels of Bloom's taxonomy, here is an example that was taken from our reading. So it's Miss Gwendolyn who teaches a history class, and she describes a classroom unit in which she integrates pre Revolutionary War colonial history with a persuasive writing assignment. And so there were four specific objectives that were included in the reading. So the first objective is that she wants her students to remember the specific parts of the parliamentary acts, example, the Sugar, Stamp, and Townsend acts. So, with using the word remember, this is clearly the cognitive process, and specific parts of the parliamentary acts is knowledge of specific details or elements, which is a subcategory of knowledge. So, this objective is placed in cell A1 under remember. So, again, the first objective addresses the cognitive process of remember. And then the second objective was explain the consequences of the parliamentary acts for different colonial groups. Now, since the student is asked to explain the consequences of the parliamentary acts, one can infer that consequences refers to general statements about the acts and it's closest to knowledge of theories, models, and structures. Therefore, be classified in cell B2 there with conceptual knowledge. And then the third example or objective was choose a colonial character or group and write a persuasive editorial stating his or her position on the acts. And the editorial must include at least one supporting reason not specifically taught or covered in the class. And so the key word in this third objective is write. Writing is producing, and that's a process that's within level six, which is create. To describe her position, which was part of the objectives, would require some combination of A, factual knowledge, and B, conceptual knowledge. So this objective will be classified, as you can see, in two cells: A6, factual knowledge and create, as well as B6, conceptual knowledge and create. And then finally, the fourth goal is self and peer edit the editorial. So the fourth objective involves the verbs self edit and peer edit. And editing is a type of evaluation. So this process is involved in number five, evaluate. So only one objective deals with remember, the remember category, and the others involve cognitive processes that are generally recognized as the more important and long lasting fruits of education. So the more complex it is, gives you a better idea of the stronger the learning objectives. And what do we learn during the reading is that it pointed out that the last two rows, procedural knowledge and metacognitive knowledge, were left blank. And we could assume that maybe there were some other processes that were, or things that were taught within the lesson that may not just have been included with the objectives. So it's not a red flag. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just okay, in my opinion. Okay, so applying all these great things that we've learned this week to start to work on the final instructional design project. And so, what I would like to do in the near future is to create a training or teaching related to leadership as part of a larger leadership program that I specifically want to create, develop, and implement for women of color aspiring to or currently in a leadership role at their place of employment. And so I envision that the first module of the course would include the basics of leadership, defining leadership, or something like Leadership 101. So, using the backward design in Bloom's taxonomy as part of my planning process. After completing this module, participants will be able to, and then I have these three objectives. Objective one, recognize the various types of leadership styles. Objective two, through analysis, execute the most appropriate leadership style based on the situation. And then objective three, evaluate individual leadership style and create a professional development plan. So again, these are the objectives. Hopefully, I have correctly identified the objectives based on this week's course readings and applied again the backward design and then the Bloom's taxonomy to create some really strong learning objectives. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for your time and stay tuned for more information, especially about the leadership module that I do want to create. Thank you and take care.